neighborhood. It's a day in the neighborhood. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Would you be my neighbor? Love's in need of love today. Don't delay. Send yours in right away. Welcome, everybody. Power to the People Show. Hope that everyone, it's not that cold out, but hope that everyone is well. Just a little chilly in the studio. That's all. Just a little chilly. Just a little chilly. But other than that, what's your heat set on at your house? What is the average heat setting in your house? I'm interested in knowing because I had my office up to 72 yesterday, and somebody walked in. They said they were sweating. I'm thinking at 72, you sweating? You're in trouble because 72 is light for me. It used to be 70 all winter long. I don't know where you were the other day when the earthquake happened, but it happened, and I was in the bed, and here's the crazy part. The night that the earthquake happened, the night before, when I got home, I wanted to check the date that my house was built in. And I knew it was the early 1900s, 1910. And so I went and looked at the Cornerstone, 1910. And I was like, these old structures stay strong. I said, man, this thing has stood here since 1910.
Wow.
And I don't have any mortar coming off. I don't have any bricks falling off. My worst thing on my house is the roof.
Built differently.
Yeah. And probably if I could get a roof like what they originally built, I wouldn't have as many problems. My problem in my roof is that every time the wind blows, I got 10 shingles on the ground. And then for me to get, when the company comes out, they got to bring a high lift. So I got to pay premium to get shingles put back on. So as long as it's not leaking, I have some shingles missing until there's enough to make it make sense. So laying in the bed, heard this boom. First I thought, is somebody breaking in? And when you hear that, I don't know what you guys did. I just kind of froze for a second just to get my thoughts. Like, was this a part of a dream? And when I felt the first initial boom and then you felt that shake kind of, I knew it wasn't a dream.
Right.
I knew it. I'm like, this is not a dream. And so now I got to figure, is somebody breaking in and they're kicking in the door, or did somebody hit the house? So by the time we both running around the house looking out of different windows and trying to figure it out, I think the kids slept through it because they have not mentioned it one time. And I just thought about that. And they never mentioned it. They didn't get up and they didn't say anything to me about, did you feel that? Or they weren't up. If they did feel it, they stayed in the bed.
Right.
They never came out of the bedroom. So I threw on my one-piece work in the basement suit, went outside, and I'm looking for where this car could be. Since car tore my fence up this summer, I'm like, okay, where's this car? Where's this car? Where's this car? And see nothing. And one of my neighbors was coming out, and she was on the phone, and I heard her ask somebody, did you feel that? And I said, okay, everybody felt it. And I thought at first, especially since we lived through the propane explosion down on Jefferson, and many people felt that when that building shook, and St. Paul AME Zion Church actually sustained a lot of damage in a lot of buildings down there. So I thought, maybe it's an explosion. Came in, and I have to say that Channel 2, in my opinion, did the best job at that hour of keeping people calm and being on their cell phones live.
Right.
And talking to people and saying, we think it's an earthquake. The crazy thing, I went to a couple other channels, and they eventually came along, but by that time, I found out what I needed. Other channels were still reporting regular news, and I'm like, wait.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Then I'm thinking, did they feel it? Because they're not addressing this thing,
right.
And this is the hottest thing right now that we need to be talking about. So big ups to what they did over there the other day. I wanted my news reporters for some reason to be just as alarmed as I was.
Right.
And so when I looked at some other places and they were just kind of regularly doing the news, like, okay, let's just skip over that. And when we find out, we'll let you know. No, I need to know live. And goes back to city and emergencies and what I've said over and over. When you're going through an emergency, you want those who you're watching to be just as passionate
Right.
about what you're going through. And you want to see that in live and you want to see that in living color. So saying that, big ups to the council, to the administration, for the passing of now hiring an emergency manager, coordinator. It's called Homeland Emergency Coordinator, who will be hired by the city. So if you know of somebody who has a specialty, it can't be somebody just talking about they know how to put make some packs for in case there's a nuclear war. No. We got some other things going on right now. And so that job is there. And also we agreed on a fleet manager who will oversee the entire fleet of the city, so that when we're talking about buying new equipment, what we need for the next blizzard, there will be a person now who will not just look at fire or police or sanitation, but they'll look at everything we have, because some of those vehicles should be able to be used interchangeably. At times, you might have a vehicle that's used for sanitation that could be used in the midst of a storm, and you got to have one person who will work with the administration, work for the mayor, and be able to move those around. So Tuesday was a big deal day for the council, but it was also a big deal day for a committee that we have now set, that I proposed and created, when it deals with not just affordable housing, but this whole picture of housing in our city, and especially about rents, especially because we talk about affordable housing. This task force isn't necessarily going to be doing, we need more affordable housing. Everybody knows that. But we need laws. This committee is going to be dealing with laws and looking at what laws we can do in the city and what laws we cannot because of state and federal law. And so that the council can pass sensible laws about evictions. The council can pass sensible laws about how high a rent can go to what we are able to do, within a year, because I'm concerned, I keep saying this, about eviction based on raising of rents.
Yep.
So now I raise your rent, I double your rent, and you're out. And right now there is some state law,
Yes.
But there is not. In some of that state law, we need to push. And so this committee will be able to look at the state law and be able to look at the city laws that can be made. And my desire is that by this summer, we're starting to lay down some of those laws so that we can get them passed. I do not want to leave this council without that. I want this to happen. And before I go to other news, I want to let the folks know at McCarley Gardens who have been calling that there is a meeting. I had a funeral, a homegoing yesterday of Richard Dixon and Dixon. Even at the repast, people were asking me, could we meet with McCarley? And we've already set that meeting up for the complaints with management. Come on, Nishan. With management. What date do we have for that?
That date is February 28th at 6 p.m.
6 p.m. over at Roswell, right?
Yes.
All right, and those in McCarley, you will hear more about it. And the new management of McCarley Gardens has agreed to be there. We've received all your complaints and your emails. Complaints from the new apartments are smaller than the old apartments. Complaints about not receiving all of your items when you moved. Complaints, just a lot of complaints. So I'm glad that the management company has agreed to meet with the tenants, and I'm going to put that we are putting that meeting together for you. And then finally, We have the folks, the second meeting that we promised of all the providers, and we know that that's a coalition, but still, I want to make it public that there is a meeting because we had a lot of complaints about so many human service agencies in the Genesee corridor. And so I propose that we put together a committee so that that committee are the providers mostly and the residents, and those complaints of garbage, those complaints of people hanging out in neighborhoods, those complaints that instead of just ignoring it or acting like it's not important to the residents, we are making sure that what I said we would do in their meeting that same week, right?
Yes, that meeting is that Monday. So with the coalition,
with the coalition. But the reason I'm putting it out there is if anybody out there is having a problem or a compliment, you can contact our office at City Hall, 851-4980, 851-4980. You can register that, and we will give that to the committee. And then eventually, as the committee gets its sea legs, because right now they're forming. So I wouldn't, suggest to the public to come in because they're just getting themselves together. And then that way, I'm sure they will have public contact with the public so they can hear from the public. So those are two great things right now going on in our city and going on in the Ellicott district to make sure, because the one thing, I know that, I'm at 10 months and a half, that sometimes when people say they're not going to run again, they can just stop working, and I'm not going to stop working. I'm going to work until the last day to get things done in the Ellicott district. Before I go to world news, this field of candidates is in some districts is looking very interesting. I'm not going to talk about any who have not announced. That's personal knowledge that I have, but I'm not taking away the thunder. I know that there hasn't been anybody who announced yet for Ellicott.
No, not that I believe publicly.
Right. We're talking about all public announcements. So the only announcements of people so far has been Nowakowski in Fillmore, Bowman in his district, Wyatt in his district, and there's somebody else, and I can't remember her name, so I'm not Ann or something. I'm not being coy. I just don't remember the name. If I remembered it, I'd say it. And in the Maston district, India Walton so far.
Yes.
And I think Rivera has already said he's going to run again in Golombek.
I was going to say Councilmember Golombek.
But trust me now.
And Fairletto.
And Fairletto, right, the incumbents. And so trust me, though, in a few weeks, petitions are going to be on the street. And it is important that you sign the petition don't just sign the petition because somebody come to your door, because you can't sign multiple petitions. So if you sign multiple petitions and it's found your name, then that name comes off the petition and off of whoever's petition is challenged. Nope, they already signed. This is the date they signed. So if they sign 3 petitions, does the first one count, or
it only goes to the person who got the first one?
Right, the first one. Yeah. So that means if you wanted Mickey Mouse instead of Minnie Mouse, and you sign Minnie Mouse's first, and then somebody comes around with Mickey's, you get caught in it, you it's deleted, so it didn't help them. And so the person who you might be backing or desire to be in office may not have enough signatures if they have bad signatures. So several things I want to educate you on. Number one is wherever you're registered is where you must sign when you sign.
Yes.
If you are signed at 123 Winslow, if you are signed at 123 on your registration card at the Board of Elections, if it says 123 Winslow, you must put 123 Winslow. Because when an opponent challenges those petitions, they're going to look up your name, and then they're going to look what is on the records of the Board of Education. And if the Board of Education, the elections, if the number is different than what is at the Board of Elections, your signature gets crossed off. It is important. And those who are carrying petitions, it is important you have the right name
Oh, boy.
and address, because if you don't have it, all your petitions are
You
gone.
educating, sir.
Yeah, because that's one of the things, I mean, that I think is so important that people do. Don't put a fake address or put an address where you don't live and it's not the address of the Board of Elections. Because if it is the wrong address, if I take out 5 sheets and I got the wrong, I'm the person who's witnessing.
Yep.
And what my address is different than what is at the Board of Elections. What will occur is all of your signatures are gone,
The whole sheet.
the entire sheet, and you have wasted. You never getting that part back of your life.
No.
You say what? You gotta talk right in
They
there.
really check too.
Yeah.
You have to make sure if you move, make sure.
Go in down there and change it,
Yes.
Yeah.
and because it is important.
And I am running.
You are running.
Yes. As far away from politics as I can.
So here's a question off of Facebook. Will you be endorsing someone for Ellicott when the time comes? Absolutely, absolutely. When the time comes, I will publicly endorse. And the reason is this. So I am a resident who became a public official.
Right.
I am not a public official who became a resident.
Right.
So this is my home. This is my heart. And now that Ellicott, especially now, has Perry Projects in the new line. Perry Projects is my heart. It is where my maternal family came from. It is where I can remember so many childhood memories. And when you go down there now, and I know there's plans, but I want to see someone come into office to ensure and keep BMHA's feet to the fire for it to happen. And for this community. Because if it is simply about running for office so that you can make it to the next office, I'm not endorsing you. The focus has to be on right now and putting. It doesn't mean you can't go to another office. It means don't use this as a stepping stone.
Right.
Don't use this as this is my entry. Use it as, and it could be your entry. I'm not against that. I'm not against that. What I'm saying is, I will endorse someone. I plan to at this point. You never know what happens. I plan to at this point. I want to endorse somebody who has the heart of people. And so yeah, I probably will.
And I wanted to jump in on this before you stop talking about petitions, because I think even for voters, registered voters, or those who are in the street, please understand that when they move this to February, it is extremely difficult to be out after work.
Absolutely.
And it's cold and
it gets darker.
and it gets dark. So
early.
these petitioners literally have an hour, 2 hours to be. So if you see somebody legit with a clipboard and with petitions, just open the door. You can still ask questions. Most petitioners are very nice and accommodating and will, but you do lose the morale of those getting petitions, because they're like, I've been out for 2 hours. It is 10 degrees outside and I got one signature. So please also be accommodating to them. And like, they ain't trying to be on your door all night, but most of them are educated enough to answer questions about the candidates they're walking for.
Absolutely. And I think that it's so important that, I'll just say this, that the candidates educate the public in advance.
Agreed.
You can't just think that by your name somebody's going to sign for you. If you haven't done anything notable in the community that anybody knows anything about, and you go out here, I've talked to several people who have said they're running, that they want to run either for Ellicott or for Maston. Those are the only people I really talk to are from those two districts. And most of the people who call me for Ellicott is to say, what do you think about me running? And here is my answer to everybody. So that's a good question about will I endorse. My question to everybody is, don't ask me.
Right.
Ask God. That's my question. That's my answer to everybody. And some have said, that's all I needed to hear. So you're not against it. I'm not against anybody. You can run. But make sure, and this is from a believer's heart. Make sure that if you run, that you are talking to God more than you're talking to man, because man will pump your head up, and people will tell you they're gonna be there. People will tell you they're gonna finance. People will tell you they're gonna walk the street. I didn't lived it already, brothers and sisters. I didn't lived it. I have had people tell me, if you get in, that's why when people be saying, if you run for mayor, I'm like,
Sounds good.
are you? Because when you run for those higher offices, it costs money. And at the end of the day, then if you go out and ask money, oh, they begging for money. Yeah, because you got to compete against other folks who got money. Right. And so it is more than a notion to run. But my advice to everyone at this point has been, if you believe in God, and nobody has called me who ain't believe in God, but you need to consult God. I'll talk to you, and I'll give you, my opinion about the district and the needs of the district. But Ellicott is a lot different in the new map. Yeah. Ellicott will not have a lot of that downtown. It's moving toward the east. And so it is more residential than it has been in a long time. So before, where I had the business community I had to consider, I had the residents I had to consider, the medical care, it was just a lot. And it's still going to be a lot, trust me, but it's moving toward the east side and being more of an east side district and south by going down into the Perry projects and over in those areas. But speaking of the Perry projects, this was interesting that I read in the paper yesterday, I believe. BMHA plans to tear down and replace Marine Drive towers. Now, I ain't going to get into all of this. It's not in my district, but I do have a vested interest. And so now, the Marine Drive towers are the towers over by Canal Side. Mm-hmm. They look a mess. They always have looked a mess. And when I first ran, there was discussion, not from the council member. Let me say this. David Franzak was against this, like I was, of making Marine Drive into market rate housing.
Yeah.
And Dave stood against it, and I stood against it, because my feeling is it has been a subsidized housing development. And people who don't have a lot of money deserve to live by the water.
I agree.
But if you look at the comments in the Buffalo News, and you probably should never look at them, because you probably should never. But sometimes I look at them just to remind myself.
Yeah.
And when you see people saying, move those poor people to North Buffalo. It's so many comments about moving them off the waterfront. And I hope whoever is in office, and I believe that the current council member would agree with me, that it is a shame that as Buffalo's waterfront changes for the better, that there are still people out there who believe that it should only be for those with wealth.
Yeah.
And that's probably the thinking of what went into Chicago.
Yep.
When Chicago, all of there, you go down the Chicago waterfront. Let me tell you something. You paying at least $3,000 a month for rent.
No, and the same thing happened in my hometown of Wilmington, and like you said, we revitalized the waterfront. Actually, we call it the riverfront. Mm-hmm. And I remember the first high-rise apartments went up, mm-hmm. and it was, I think they hit the market at like $1,300, mm-hmm. and everybody was like, "Oh, nobody can afford that in Wilmington. There was a waiting list before they even broke ground.
Yep.
And then what did that do? That just spurred other people like, okay, well, we just going to keep building more and more towers at 2,000. And that's how exactly what's happening in Buffalo. Once they find there's a market of people that's going to pay 13, then somebody's going to build for 15. Then somebody will build for 1,800 a month. And then that's how you build that.
Well, they're already doing that in Waterfront Village.
Yep.
When we first bought down in Waterfront Village, I think the Pasquale, whatever, had just been finished. But now you got another housing development down there. I think the houses are going for almost $1 million in the condos, almost. Yeah. Elevators in them and all that. And I mean, it's bound to happen. But what we have to do as a government is to ensure that we also are. You want to live down here for $1 million, fine. But down the street from you is maybe somebody who's paying $400 because it's subsidized, mm-hmm. and that's life. And I don't think that as a city grows or changes that it should eliminate their poor.
No, absolutely.
If you look right now, and whether people want to admit it or not, and nobody ever told me this, even as a government official or as president of Common Council, but I always felt that the fix was in for Perry Projects.
Yeah.
And that the fix was in to hold it for the Bills Stadium. And it was more about the Bills Stadium than housing people who need housing right now. And now that the bills aren't coming, now that it's like, okay, well, now we got plans. Oh, we got plans. We got
Yeah.
plans. But at the, when I read this, that they are planning now, and it's going to be over years and years, of tearing down Marine Drive and then rebuilding. I'm not against that. However, as long as remains for affordable,
Yes.
and and we're doing something with the other places, because to me, this Marine Drive is getting the attention because of where it's located.
Right.
Marine Drive is getting the attention because it's on the waterfront. Marine Drive is getting the attention because wealthy people live around it. Marine Drive is getting the attention because that's the place or the area where the Sabres play. Marine Drive is getting the attention because of the former HSBC Tower that now belongs to Doug Jamal. Marine Drive is getting that attention because of the development around it. But where I think that it would be a just miscarriage of justice is if Marine Drive got that attention because where it's located, and Perry Projects does not get that attention because of where it's located. Because the Perry Projects is kind of in a desert by itself. And so and there are a medium to low income housing around Perry Project. So if we pay attention to Marine Drive because of the wealthy, and we don't pay attention to places like Jasper Parish that is indefinite, and these are not places in my district, and it doesn't have to be, but Jasper Parish that has been in need for years. If you don't pay attention to Langfield, that has
LBJ.
been in need for a long time, and you're only paying attention to Marine Drive because of the status symbol and the people who are around it, because the Naval Park is there, because you redone. Well, no. At the end of the day, then make sure we are being equitable so that other areas that could benefit from an upgrade receive that upgrade. That's just my thought.
No, I completely agree. And like you said, you named a few. And like I said, there's still LBJ towers. There's still some other towers that are in prime locations that are entryways into the city that also should be looked at and reconsidered for.
Absolutely.
I mean, at least paint them. Let's power wash them, something.
I mean, even beyond that, I mean, go inside of these
Yeah, no,
units,
absolutely.
update them. The facade is an easier thing to do, but you pay attention to them.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
something.
Because it says to me, and I know some people feel like, we got a lot of people still who feel like. People who live in public housing want to live there. And so, now, let me tell you this.
Some do.
Some of them do. My grandmother, before she moved over here, when she lived in the Perry, she was fine. And this is what she said. I'm not going to be able to live in any other place. And, she wasn't working. She had a stroke. She worked. Now, my grandmother worked. She worked at M. Wiles until she got sick. And, she said, I'm not going to be able to afford any other place. Basically, where there's community, because it was community. And solidly built houses and warm. That's what we call project heat.
Yep.
So there are some people that's okay to do for them. I don't think that makes them bad people. I think that one of the things that when you talk about municipal housing, I think Renato Graham would agree with me on this, is that the object of housing projects in the back in the day wasn't just to house people forever.
No, it wasn't.
It was temporary. One of the things and I'll say this about Stephanie Coward in Niagara Falls, I'm never ever going to forget this. All of the programs that she had to get people out of poverty, She had program. We talk about Northland Corridor. Stephanie was doing that kind of stuff before Northland Corridor even came along. Stephanie had these places would be packed of young people and having career day and teaching them so that the generations of people who lived in public housing would begin to kind of peel off.
Right.
And I remember probably the first person to move out of the projects on my maternal side was us. We were there for a few months. I was a baby. Then my uncle, I think Glenn, and then Rodney, and then Donna, and so all of my aunts and uncles, none of them live in now seniors, maybe
Right.
a senior unit, but not they all moved out. They all ended up getting their own homes. When one got one, the other one got one, and it was just they saw other opportunity. And I
Right.
think I talked about this recently. They saw other opportunity. So I think that this model that we have right now, if it truly is just you pay your rent and we just gonna accept it, and they're especially for young people.
Yeah.
The seniors, they're gonna stay. Leave them alone. Just take care of our seniors. But young people learning, that's where you got all of these like centers. Martha Mitchell Center, Perry Projects has Lanigan. I'm sure nobody ain't been in Lanigan Fieldhouse, and I don't know when. But those centers should be used as classrooms, as places of education, of bringing in new opportunity, of showing different things. Perry Projects used to have a marching band. I think the Langfield had a marching band. So they were taking kids out of town. They were showing them. Yeah. So my aunts and uncle were in the marching band. And I'd be so jealous because they'd be getting on the Greyhound, going out of town, the charter buses. I couldn't go because I didn't live in the projects and I wasn't in the marching band. Couldn't be in the marching band because I didn't live in the project. So they, Mr. Brinson, all these people that I will never forget in my life, they were exposing them. And now, their children are doing well. The chairman of the trustee board of Elam, that's projects. That's projects. Jeanette Jeanette Ogden, that's projects. That's projects. That came out of the projects, and there were programs for you to go back to school and to help you with daycare. And Jeanette talks about that all of the time. And so people were able, and let me give a big ups to Art Eve, because you had then government working together for education. So now you could afford to go back to school. You had daycare, you had tuition, help with your tuition, and that was pushed.
Right.
And so you had a generation, at least in the Perry. I don't know of any other area. I only know the Perry. You had a generation that ended up moving out and doing great things in our city
Right.
to this minute. Sydney Clanton, who sold us the condo, who was our real estate agent, I believe, when we bought the house on Humboldt, became a real estate agent. That's projects. His wife now, and I don't know if his wife grew up in the projects, but who now has Airbnb, who has rental houses and all that. That's what it looked like. So those programs were so important. So I'm glad to hear about Marine Drive, but I'd be jumping up and down when we're paying attention to areas that are not in high profile areas, period. Because some of the people living in there, by the way, are not on subsidies.
No, they're not.
They pay the full rent.
A lot of them.
They pay the full rent.
More than people know.
Yeah, they pay the full rent. And the rent is still affordable, but they don't have to qualify. They just pay the max and get to live on the waterfront.
And have turned their apartments into personal condos and everything else. So
Syria, we talked about the earthquake here, and C told you is encouraging dreaming. Those programs are like those encourage dreaming. Exactly. Syria and Turkey, 22,000 people dead. I want to put this in perspective of our earthquake and their earthquake. So I'm reading an article. I'm just read a little of it, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about where Syria is, why you don't see as much help going to them. Yeah, let's dig in deeper. I'm at the stage of life. I ain't just reporting the news. I'm digging in deeper. Turkey and Syria face threat, and this is from NBC News, of secondary disaster after earthquakes. Even a dramatic rescues offer moments of relief, and they had a 7.6 magnitude. And when you think about it, we had a almost 4. Those 3 to 4 numbers, meant the difference between no deaths here and 22,000. And then I'm sure the infrastructure there, just like in Haiti, had something to do with it because, we have all these laws, and this is what I want people to understand. We have all these building codes to keep our buildings up in an earthquake. And in certain countries, like if you go to Haiti right now, I'm not talking about living in Port-au-Prince and probably even in Port-au-Prince. I'm talking about living further out. You build,
ain't nobody coming to check.
Ain't nobody coming to check. And it's the same thing in some places of the Dominican. You just build. And this is the truth, and I know it for a fact. And they do have building inspectors. They do have government workers. But in some areas, it is so crooked. Yeah. Just like the police. You get pulled over and don't do this because I said it. Don't do this. Hear me. If you, especially you don't speak the language and all that. Listen, in the Dominican, when they look in your window, you getting pulled over. You're getting pulled over. And I remember getting pulled over one time and the officer saying they're going to tow my car. For what? Claimed I ran a light. I promise you, they stopped me at the light. I'm at the light. I'm at the red light.
You're at the light.
Had me out. I'm nervous. I'm like, oh Lord, now I gotta get, I got this rental car. Some just said, calm down. He gets me to the back of the car and like, well, if you give us this amount of money, and I didn't, thank God I ain't had no money. I don't carry money like that in foreign countries. I didn't have the money. And eventually they gave me a ticket. They did give me a ticket because I wouldn't pay them off. I went to go pay the ticket, and where I went to pay the ticket, they told me, you don't have to pay the ticket. Wow. Because we have no way of tracing tickets. Like somebody I knew, they was like, it's just their book. They have in certain parts of Dominican, they have no speed, no radars. They have no DUI ways of checking. And in some of the more developed places, if you're in Santo Domingo or something, they may. I'm talking about if you out on the outskirts. Nothing.
Wow.
Did not have to pay the ticket. Couldn't even find the place to pay the ticket.
Wow.
I went, and then a friend of mine was like,
Just come on out. Just come on out.
Don't waste time.
Make sure you know where the U.S. Embassy is and the phone number.
And keep the
whenever
phone.
you go out of town.
In any place you go.
Always.
I always have it either in my phone, but I'm going to tell you, have it on your person too. Because in some of these countries, they will take your phone. Mm-hmm. And I've traveled, halfway around the world. They will take your phone because they don't want you to call.
And register with the embassy. Whenever you go out of town, register with the embassy because they'll know when you're supposed to be in town and when you're not out of town. And if your passport...
See, I've never registered with them.
When your passport doesn't register that you're supposed to be out on Friday, they will start tracking to see where you are.
Well, I got a threat of arrest one time, and I said... I remember it was so corny because they were asking me for a bribe. And I think I had just had it up to here. And I was just like, no. No. So you know how you know this because when you use the radio. Yeah. So when you use your Fire Radio and you click in, nothing comes over, you have the control. You've got the frequency. They're claiming they're calling their boss to see if they can let me go, but I'm hearing radio traffic while they go in Spanish, and I'm like, I'm not paying a bribe. You're gonna have to take. I didn't do anything, and they let me go. I don't suggest that to people who don't speak the language. You're afraid. You got to make your own choice as an adult. Because there are just times, and depending what season I'm in, depending what mood I'm in, of my life, where you just go like, no, I'm not doing that, and you take the chance. But if you don't take the chance because of me, don't take the chance because of me.
I'm bailing you out.
Have your face on a hot car hood, like, oh, he said don't.
Yeah, don't take the chance because of me. So here's I just want to read this about, and I'm gonna skip over the names of these places because I don't know how to pronounce them. Emergency services, volunteers, and families have toiled despite diminishing hope for those still trapped in sub-zero temperatures. Whole apartment houses are down, whole neighborhoods. Streets have grown heavy with bodies wrapped in blankets, while residents have huddled over fires as the destruction forced makeshift morgues for the dead and shelters for the living. The government and aid groups have distributed millions of hot meals as well as tents, blankets, God bless them, but help was still struggling to reach many people in need, driving anger in southern Turkey and northern Syria, where civil war has only compounded the difficulties. But in a place starting with a K, near the epicenter of Monday's 7.8 magnitude, NBC News witnessed one of the many rescues that offer a glimmer of hope to millions. Rescuers clambered around a 57-year-old woman who was still conscious when she was pulled from the wreckage. Wrapped in a gold-colored emergency blanket, she's rushed to the hospital. In Murat K, I'm not going to try, one of the many rescuers at the site who had first heard of the woman's voice, she survived days under rubble because she was trapped in an air pocket that was insulated. She was inside 20 inches of space. Imagine was going through her mind. 20 inches of space when there was enough air. Where there was enough air, that's how she survived. It was a miracle. She says, thank God, God being called on again. This is the 8th person I've rescued alive. God willing, I still have hope. In Gaziantep, there were tears of joy, and this is the last part of the article, early Friday when 17-year-old Adnan Mohammed Korkut was pulled from the rubble fully conscious after 94 hours trapped in the basement of an apartment building that had collapsed. He was unable to move for 4 days. Determined not to starve, he drank his own urine. I didn't even know you could.
You can.
In that.
You can.
I understand. And I'm not being gross and I'm not being funny
you
because this is tragic. I would have never thought to do that.
You can do it.
And it won't poison your body?
No, well, after a few times, it becomes more and more toxic. But like, if you did it initially, you would take the water out, and then it would be toxic. And then if you had to do it again, it just becomes more and more toxic. You'll take out more water.
These folks are suffering. So my thought was, why don't we have a whole lot of aid going? Then I looked up from different sites about our relationship with Turkey. And this is how it starts: neither friend nor foe. And it while Turkey, and this is from 2018, but I did find others from the Biden administration, and this kind of, they formally are still a part of NATO, but they are not a partner of the United States. So it says the strategic relationship between the United States and Turkey is over, and this was 2018. While Turkey remains formally a NATO ally, it is not a partner of the United States. The United States should not be reluctant to oppose Turkey directly when Ankara undermines U.S. policy. I'm just going to read a little bit. I don't think I brought my other article up, and it's okay because I'll stick right where I'm at. And it says, while Turkey remains formally, it is not a partner. Unlike in previous eras, Washington and Ankara no longer share overreaching threats of interest that bind them together. So they not enemies, but not friends.
Right.
So
acquaintance.
Yeah. And then because in certain areas you already have civil war, but I think that when it comes down to life and death, whatever aid that we are able to give, we should be giving. And I think that and that's just Darius' way of thinking. I'm the kumbaya guy, always wanting peace. So at the end of the day, that's the kind of relationship that we have with Turkey. Biden is trying, according to some articles, to make a better relationship. They are concerned about some of their policies, how people are treated in these areas. And so it does when you have a human rights issue going on, and then you have an emergency.
Right.
I'm sure very difficult, and I'm sure the U.S. and I haven't been studied it enough to know. I'm sure that NATO, the U.S. Will send aid in some way.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll probably come from a European ally or something. And I think we all have to be real. The U.S.'s foreign policy is generally connected to commerce and trading.
Absolutely.
And what can we get from that country. Right. So we normally just don't throw aid out for a country that we get nothing from. That's why everyone is so concerned about China, because we get so much from China. We got to fix China's because we're the two biggest economies in the world. We can't be feuding. Somebody's got to fix it. But like you said, some of these other countries where might just be corn, for lack of a better, might be our only place of commerce. They're like, all right, well, I can get corn from somebody else,
or we can get some for somewhere else, and it won't be such of a big loss.
Right, exactly.
Now, of course, the WHO organization, they're involved, the World Health Organization, because they don't play favorites, but allegedly.
Yeah.
So they're involved in getting support, but this is a whole area of people who are displaced now. They are literally on the street with the bodies.
Yeah.
And a report that I read this morning, they are running out of places to bury the dead because you have so much knocked down and the ground is so hard, and now you don't have electricity. You know it's a lot, and so I wanted to take the time on this show today to show respect for their dead, to show respect and to bring attention to our own people of what is happening in Syria and Turkey and how serious this thing is that is over there. And here's where my head is. We haven't had a blizzard like the one we had this year since I was a kid. You weren't
77.
You weren't born. Were you born?
Blizzard was 77.
Yeah. I mean, you.
I was 10.
Were you 10?
Yeah, I was 10.
Okay. Were you 10?
Yeah. I was 10. I was born in 67.
You was born in 67? Wow.
67, yeah.
I thought you'd have been about 5 years old. 77.
Yeah.
Haven't had one since you were 10.
Yeah.
I have never, ever experienced an earthquake in Buffalo. Not that I knew that it was an earthquake.
It's funny because, well, UB is one of the largest earthquake researchers in the country, University of Buffalo. We live on a really big fault that a lot of people don't know of. Actually, Cold Springs is because there's a spring that runs through Buffalo.
That's why it's called
into
Cold
Lake
Spring.
Erie. That's why it's called Cold Spring.
Underneath the ground.
Which is considered a fault.
Yep.
So if we really get it, I mean, if you go and say the top 5 cities or countries that have earthquake issues, Buffalo ranks in the top 10.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Oh yeah. You are obviously California, but Buffalo because of that fault, that Cold Spring fault that we live on.
So, and I've never heard that. I've never experienced an earthquake. I should say here. Overseas, I did once. And I remember we were in Panama, and that earthquake knocked our dishes and stuff down.
Wow.
In Panama. But here, and my point is that things are changing. And anybody with our atmosphere, with our earth, anybody who does not believe that. And one of the things I taught last night in Bible study was about relationships and how this whole existence was based on relationship. God and the Holy Spirit, God and God and man, God and man and the earth. First it was God and the earth, and then he says to man, take care of the earth. We've done obviously a poor job in taking care of the earth. And at the end of the day, we are paying a great debt. You have places that had water where water is drying out. We said God is not making any more land. He's not making any more land, but there are places where there's water that is now land.
Yeah.
You go up to Alaska, and the
ice caps are
ice
thawing.
caps are melting, and it's affecting the wildlife. So that's why I really think in this area we got to be ready for anything.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if this area, if a hurricane could come. I don't know. I've never seen a hurricane.
We've had tornadoes.
Yeah.
We've had tornadoes out in Cheektowaga.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And so I think that things are changing, and we have to pay attention and be sensitive to other people's plight, and not just look at Turkey and Syria. Corrine says that was my second in this area since 1971. Jen was 18 during the 77 blizzard, and so. Marie, she's back to the urine. She says some folks' urine is straight up toxic. Why'd y'all laugh? It is.
I mean, no,
I took that as a serious.
No, it is.
Probably is. I mean, depending if they're drinking, doing,
what you putting in your body.
drugs and stuff. That's
Okay,
probably
okay,
what she's talking
okay.
about. But
I'm like,
is,
what?
It is
What did I miss?
digestible, but I mean,
I guess
at a
like,
level
if it's either that or life,
almost.
I got to figure it out.
Most definitely.
I got to figure it out. Carolyn Lane says, I watch Bible study. It was great teaching. Thank you. You're welcome. And those of you who, and I told a candidate who called me, or a possible candidate, I said, go back and look at my teaching. Just go back and look at my teaching. You want to know something? Ask of God. Ask of God. And it's about relationships. So we got to do better with our relationships. What were you about to say, Mark? Oh, you weren't about to say.
no,
Oh, I
go
thought you- yeah. So that's why I wanted to bring this up. I know it may affect some people locally because we have a lot of new Americans here in Buffalo.
Yeah.
But even if it doesn't, if it's not your family member, if you never planned on going to Turkey, if you never planned on going to Syria, it's not on my bucket list. But having a heart for what other people are going through is so important. I didn't get to my last topic that I would have talked about. I'll bring it next week, and that's really about. And if I remember, and Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. I'm going to talk about the key issues that Black Americans want addressed in elections. And I don't mean
that's a good one.
the key issues that Black Americans want addressed in elections.
I gotta be here for that.
So maybe we'll do that next week
gotta be here for that
and hear what those things are. I know I got a little more time, but let me. I want to spend a little time with my sponsors and really thank them and not go out as quick. And I'm going to probably incorporate the sponsors at the halfway point, commercial, their commercials at the halfway point, because I want them to know how much I appreciate them. Hobson's, the doctor of dry cleaning. Listen, I take my stuff over there and it's right and it's tight, and sometimes it's tight because of my stomach, not because of the job that they have done. It is because of my belly. Yep, the food. Hobson's, the Dr. Dry Cleaning, 874 East Delavan. If you have a chance, look at the monument that she had erected there out of her own pocket for the TOPS 10, for those whose lives was lost in TOPS. Take a look at it. But for on what they do in business, take your clothes, your hats, your sneakers, take them all over there. Mark was in my office today buffing his sneaker on my shoe buffer. I'd never seen anybody buff sneakers, but okay. He could take them to Hobson's and they will make them look brand new. Brand new. Brian K. Lewis Funeral Home. And I had a dream about Brian the other day, but I wasn't in the casket. Wasn't in the
You
casket.
should have lived with that.
347 Peckham. These are my most scratched up glasses, and I refuse to get rid of them. The gold is gone, but I love these. 2528 Bailey, 1275 Sycamore. In your hour of need, Brian K. Lewis Funeral Home. Announcement: Best Self Behavioral Health will be at True Bethel on Thursday, February 16th at 6 p.m. You can contact the office or register for these group sessions. Whatever you want to talk about, they're willing to. I forgot what their topic is, but it's free of charge. Best Self will be here. So part of our Bible study now is mental health. Part of our Bible study is having mental health classes. You can call to register 895-8222. February 16th. Is that coming up?
That's next Thursday.
Oh, that's right, because Valentine's Day is coming up.
Tuesday.
So men don't forget, and women don't forget Valentine's Day coming
Hallelujah.
up. But Thursday, February 16th, 6 p.m., one of our classes here. And I was so glad to see so many people coming back to Bible Revival. So many people coming back. It was wonderful last night. So put it on your calendar for next Thursday. And if you need more information about Best Self being here at True Bethel, you can call us at 895-8222. I think we've covered everything that we have to cover. Until next week, power to the people.